If there is one thing SpongeBob has perfected over the years, it's making Plankton's life an absolute hell. And even though he's a villain, there are times when you just have to wonder, how bad can his luck really get? Let's take a look at some of the worst moments the little chum bucket has ever experienced. We open with Plankton and Karen counting down the seconds until their bait goes bad, which begs the first question: why the hell is Plankton counting down the time for this? It's like he's eagerly waiting for the moment his trash reaches nuclear levels of toxicity. But hey, once the big moment arrives, Plankton loads up a huge barrel of old chum and heads to his usual dumping grounds. The problem is that this place clearly has a sign that says you can't throw bait here without getting a $1,000 fine. And what's Plankton's brilliant solution? Cover up the sign with another one that says, "Ask me if I mind." A completely foolproof plan. But when Plankton tries to dump his bait, he realizes that the place is already completely full. Surprise! It seems the ocean has had enough of his disgusting waste. Plankton, in his infinite wisdom, decides to look for another place to dump his bait. But in the process, he ends up accidentally trapping one poor guy in the middle of all that filth. An average bikini bottom citizen, now the victim of an impromptu biological attack. He then tries to get rid of the bait in the wishing well. Spoiler alert, it's also stuck with bait. So what does Plankton do? He tosses a coin and wishes that a well won't be filled with his waste. Yes, because that's how magic works, clearly. And of course, absolutely nothing happens, although in a somewhat strange scene, the well sparkles with magic and the bait-trapped man manages to get out. Frustrated, Plankton continues to look for ways to get rid of his trash, and this is when things start to get really out of hand. He arrives at a snail park and decides to put the bait through a pipe, not realizing that it also goes through SpongeBob. And the moment bait starts shooting out of Bob's pores, we know that this has gotten completely out of hand. But SpongeBob, in his infinite innocence, thinks this is all part of some holiday. Instead of clarifying the situation, Plankton lies to him by telling him that today is Chum Day, a holiday when fish give each other baits as gifts. Who would have thought that Plankton would end up inventing a holiday by accident? SpongeBob obviously is thrilled and agrees to help him out. So now we have our favorite square guy spreading rotten bait all over town, house by house, with the happiness of a kid on Christmas.
Well, Plankton, you got rid of it all, and with no chum-uppance.
And this is when we know that the universe is going to make him pay dearly for saying this out loud, because like in any SpongeBob episode, if a character feels confident about his success, it's a matter of seconds before anything falls apart. The result is an apocalyptic explosion of bait. The streets of Bikini Bottom are completely covered in an avalanche of filth. Bait begins to feel like snow and the citizens panic.
What has that yellow idiot done?
Yes, Plankton, the $1,000,000 question. Because if anyone has seen this episode, it's impossible not to wonder the same thing. Somehow, his plan to throw bait in an uncontrolled manner ended up backfiring in the worst possible way. The citizens of Bikini Bottom, completely furious, go after Plankton with less than friendly intentions, but just when it seems that all is lost, SpongeBob shows up dressed as Santa Claus and starts singing about Chum Day. He tries to get the town to accept his nightmare as a holiday, and although no one seems convinced at first, things take an unexpected turn when the kids stop playing with the chum as if it were snow, and yes, that's enough to get the entire town to accept the idea. But before Plankton can enjoy his victory, reality sets in. The health inspector shows up and either finds him or forces him to eat all the spilled bait for the sake of public safety. Days later, the city is clean and shiny, but Plankton has been reduced to a living glob after ingesting all the bait, and so ends his worst nightmare yet. So let's move on to the next catastrophe on the list. Plankton is on his 267th mission to steal the secret Krabby Patty formula. This time, he's decided to disguise himself inside a ketchup jar because, of course, if disguising himself as a counterfeit bell, a robot, or a bubble didn't work, a ketchup jar definitely will. But as expected, the plan backfires. A customer sprays the sauce in the wrong direction, and Plankton ends up catapulted into Mr. Krabs' office, who, without a second thought, throws him back into his depressing chum bucket. Defeated and fed up with his miserable existence, Plankton sits down in front of his hologram of Meatloaf, and this is where the big existential crisis ensues. Imagine hating your life so much that you'd rather trade it in for that of a cheapskate crab who lives in a constant paranoia and sleeps with a jar of money under his pillow. But Plankton is convinced that Mr. Krabs has the perfect life. So confidently, his computer wife, Karen, reminds him that, oh, what a coincidence, has a life-swapping machine. Because yes, apparently in her spare time, Karen invents revolutionary technology instead of divorcing this bitter dwarf. Plankton uses the machine and bam, he wakes up in a Krusty Krab's office with the big reveal that he's now Mr. Krabs. Is this his moment of glory? His big chance to be the ultimate boss of the fast food world? Well, not exactly.
I'm in the Krusty Krab. And that means the life switcher was a success! The Krusty Krab is mine!
Oh, how adorable. Plankton thinks this is going to work out. Does anyone want to explain to him how SpongeBob episodes work? Because irony is about to hit him in the face with a Krabby Patty. With his new status, the first thing Plankton does is demand that SpongeBob give him 2 Krabby Patties to inspect the bugs because, of course, every boss needs to do quality control. SpongeBob gives him 2 new burgers and Plankton happily goes back to his office to finally enjoy the taste of victory. But his peace of mind lasts exactly 5 seconds because SpongeBob appears out of nowhere for his weekly performance review. Performance review? Since when has there been such strict bureaucracy at the Krusty Krab? Plankton tries to dismiss him with a simple, "You're doing great," but SpongeBob wants criticism. And well, no one is ready to deal with a SpongeBob who needs validation. Plankton randomly tells him that he uses too much sauce, but instead of calming him down, this triggers an emotional meltdown in the sponge. As a desperate solution, Plankton promotes him to a co-cashier, which of course pisses off Squidward, who now has to run the grill. If you thought Squidward was bad at his regular job, wait until you see him cook. It's a culinary disaster worthy of a cooking show in hell. And if Plankton didn't have enough problems, in walks Pearl. Well, Pearl Plankton. His new alternative daughter, demanding an advance on her allowance. Plankton gives her $1 and in response, she starts crying like she's been told that the cetacean fad is out of style. Welcome to fatherhood, Plankton. Still thinks Mr. Krabs' life is wonderful? Then, as if life were saying this isn't enough punishment yet, a siren starts to sound. SpongeBob, Squidward and everyone in the restaurant panic because this means a threat to the secret formula, and sure enough, the threat appears. Mr. Krabs, but now turned into Krabs, completely naked and with same desperation with which Plankton used to steal the formula. And as if the scene wasn't ridiculous enough, SpongeBob fights him up by shooting a clothing cannon at him. Because of course, when all else fails, throwing an underwire bra is the best defense strategy.
Enjoy your victory, Screech Plankton, because someday the Krabby Patty formula will be mine!
Ah, yes, the classic promise of revenge. As if it were a soap opera, I swear I will return. At this point, Plankton realizes that his perfect life is a nightmare, so he does the only logical thing. He screams, strips naked, and presses a giant button to reverse everything. A graceful ending worthy of any successful businessman. And so ends another chapter of Life Sucks for Plankton. Because if you thought this was bad, wait until you see what happens to him in the next episode. It all starts at Mr. Krabs' office, who is proving that his love for money is stronger than any other relationship in his life. SpongeBob walks in and they have one of those talks about Mr. Krabs' grid, which to no one's surprise is still a caricature of capitalist grid. They both leave the room, which brings us to the true protagonist of this tragedy, Plankton. Plankton comes out of hiding in a jar of pickles because of course there is no better place to hide than in your worst enemy's food. He jumps on the secret formula safe, studies it, and nothing. No matter how hard he tries, he just can't see the combination, and this is where the first of many misfortunes come in. Mr. Krabs returns, mistakes Plankton for a pickle and shoves him in his mouth. Fortunately or unfortunately for him, Mr. Krabs spits him out and Plankton ends up on the ground, hurt and humiliated.
I think you hit it! You couldn't see the correct combination because you have only one eye. You lack depth perception.
Maybe you're right. That would explain why I stink at darts.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Not only is Plankton small and pathetic, he's only spatially colorblind. Now it all makes sense. It's not that he's an incompetent villain, it's just that he can't judge distances. That explains so many things, like the fact that he still thinks the Chum Bucket is a viable restaurant. Plankton, of course, decides to fix his vision because at this point, anything that can help him steal the secret formula seems like a good idea. After several failed surgical attempts, which leave him looking like a googly-eyed mutant monster, Karen informs him that she needs human tears to complete the procedure, and here comes Plankton's second great misfortune, making SpongeBob cry. Plankton finds Bob at a picnic and tells him a tragic story about spilled milk. He literally spills milk on the ground just to make Bob feel sadder, and Bob, in his infinite sensitivity, cries as if the world is ending. Bingo! Plankton gets the tears and the operation is complete, but here's where everything goes awry, because instead of getting enhanced vision, he gets SpongeBob's perception, which means he now sees everything as a rainbow of happiness and positivity. So, when the time finally comes to steal the formula, he gets distracted by how beautiful the world is.
That new eye of yours, your evil DNA has become corrupted by SpongeBob's nice DNA. You've gone from evil to Knievel! You're becoming as harmless as that fry cook.
And there you have it, Plankton has officially gone from villain to completely softy. His evil DNA has been tainted with positivity and optimism. He's basically not Plankton anymore, and the worst part is, he doesn't even realize it. But don't worry, there's even more humiliation on the way. In an attempt to prove he's still evil, Plankton tries to steal the formula again, but instead he gets distracted by a burning building, and of course he rescues it, because that's what a happy Plankton does. And in the ultimate irony, he finds a formula on the ground and returns it to Mr. Krabs, who obviously thinks it's a trick. At this point, Plankton realizes his destiny. He's no longer a villain, he's been turned into, well, a miniature version of SpongeBob, and in his desperation, he tries to remove his eye repeatedly, but fails. His latest misfortune comes when Bob throws a surprise party for him. Everyone adores him, celebrates him until the group hug from his new friends causes his second eye to fall off, and at that moment, Plankton returns. The real Plankton, and like any villain who regains his essence, he decides to expel everyone with security lasers. And so ends one of the worst experiences in Plankton's life. He tried to improve his vision, but ended up losing the only thing that made him himself. In the episode, The Ghost of Plankton, our favorite pint-sized villain decides that being a ghost is the perfect solution to his never-ending failure to steal the secret formula. The story begins in the most casual way possible, a movie night with Karen, but as usual, Plankton is too busy with his obsession with the Krusty Krab to simply enjoy the movie, and when he pretends to be a ghost, a light bulb goes off in his tiny head. What if he really was? Because clearly nothing could go wrong with this idea. So, in an act of brilliance that only Plankton could consider logical, he decides to build a machine to extract his own spirit. Because when you're a professional failure, the only solution is to become intangible, and against all odds, it works. Plankton turns into a ghost, ready to walk through the walls and get his precious treasure. There's just one small problem: he can't pick anything up, and this is where our beloved Flying Dutchman comes in, who appears on Mr. Krabs' chair to laugh at Plankton's pathetic situation.
What's so funny? Stupid ghost!
You are, that's what. You can't just float in on your first day and pick things up.
And so, with one line, the Dutchman makes it clear that Plankton is the most useless rookie in the ghost world. Because of course, if you couldn't steal the formula with a physical body, why would you think it would be easier without one? But to everyone's surprise, the pirate sees potential in this floating microbe and decides to train it in the art of the ghost. So brace yourselves, because what follows is basically paranormal training, with a lot of unnecessary violence. Lesson 1. Shape-shifting. Want to scare people? Turn into your worst nightmares. The Flying Dutchman does it perfectly. Plankton, on the other hand, well, he ends up looking like a misshapen potato. A stark reminder that scaring isn't for everyone. His best attempt is to turn into an exact copy of the Flying Dutchman, which is impressive but also completely pointless. The reward? A good smack, because of course, nothing motivates more than physical pain. Next lesson, scaring. The Dutchman demonstrates this easily, scaring a burglar with his imposing presence. Plankton, on the other hand, finds the most ridiculous way to fail, scaring himself with his own reflection. The irony here is that Plankton's initial taunt comes back to him like a boomerang. Seriously, the guy has become the thing he fears most, a completely laughingstock even among the dead. Now we move on to the third test, haunting houses. The goal is to drive someone to the point of despair that they go insane. Victim? Squidward. Because let's be honest, no one is more prone to a mental breakdown than he is. Plankton starts off strong, turning into Squidward's bed and shaking him awake. But it wouldn't be a true spooky attack without some green slime. Squidward, in a state of pure terror, tries to hide in a drawer with his clarinet, only to have the instrument snatched away from him for how horribly he plays it and transform into a spectral version of SpongeBob. And that, folks, is enough to make Squidward collapse. There is a silver lining to this madness, though Plankton eventually discovers that he can now pick up objects. And with that, we come to the final lesson, learning to pick things up mindfully. The trick: getting really angry, and if there's one thing Plankton is good at, it's building up frustration. So, with a new sense of purpose, he returns to the Krusty Krab and attempts once again to steal the secret formula, and this time he succeeds. Well, sort of.
Well, I'm calling it. This ghost racket is for the birds. I'm going back to my body where I belong.
Remember when we thought this idea couldn't get any worse? Well, now Plankton returns to his restaurant to find that Karen has held a funeral in his honor. His body has been lying inert for so long that everyone thinks he's dead. And if you think this is bad, just wait, because the Flying Dutchman decides that having a body is better than being a spirit. And without a second thought, he possesses Plankton.
Those people are angry. Woo! I never thought I'd say this, but I'd rather be a dead me than an alive you. Bye!
When even a normal ghost prefers death to living you alive, you know you've hit rock bottom. And the worst part is that after being trampled by the crowd, Plankton barely has time to celebrate his return to life before being trampled again. Classic. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's that being a ghost doesn't make you any more competent. Instead of making his plan easier, Plankton only succeeded in making his life even more miserable. And with that, we wrap up our list of the worst thing that happened to Plankton, from being emotionally and physically crushed to even failing in the afterlife. Our little villain continues to prove that his bikini bottom's official punching bag. So next time you think you're having a bad day, just remember, at least you're not Plankton. What might make your day better is subscribing to the channel and checking out the rest of Bob's videos we have. See you next time.